You're watching Sky News Breakfast. Our top stories this morning. More hostages are expected to be released from Gaza. You're watching Sky News Breakfast. Our top stories this morning. More hostages are expected to be released from Gaza today to join the 24 already freed as the temporary truce between Israel and Hamas continues. 39 Palestinian prisoners were also released from Israeli jails and welcomed by cheering crowds in the West Bank. In the UK, tens of thousands of anti-war protesters will once again take to the streets in the latest demonstrations calling for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. There are reports from the US that the former police officer convicted of killing George Floyd has been stabbed in prison. In Dublin, a large police presence has remained in place overnight, with officers on standby for more violence this weekend. And Sky News can exclusively reveal that at least 246 XL bully dogs living in rescue shelters will be put down before the end of the year. Okay, let's take a look at the stories making this morning's front pages. Free after 48 days, that's the front of the eye, featuring a handful of the hostages released by Hamas as part of the agreed prisoner swap. The Times declares, at last, freedom for some. The Mirror, as you can see, has a nearly identical headline. The Financial Times says a truce has taken hold in Gaza, while The Guardian describes the war as having been paused. And according to The Telegraph, the chief executive of Comic Relief has resigned after disagreeing with the charity's stance that there should be a ceasefire in Gaza. Well, away from matters in the Middle East, the Mail calls for the end of the freeze on personal income tax thresholds, which the paper brands a stealth tax. The Express speaks to the broadcaster and campaigner, Dame Esther Rantzen, as she undergoes treatment for cancer. And in a week when the Home Secretary James Cleverly was forced to deny swearing about the town of Stockton-on-Tees in Parliament, the Star calls it a Garden of Eden. Well, with us this morning to review the papers are Dawn Neeson, former editor of the Daily Star, and Shona Craven, community editor and columnist at the Scottish newspaper The National. Welcome both.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for joining us. So let's start with the Times front page. Shona, this one to you, the headline, "At last, freedom for some."
Yeah, I mean, this is dominating all of the papers today, as you would expect. The release of hostages, including some people quite surprising, the in addition to the 13 Israelis who've been freed, 10 Thais and 1 Philippines national as well. And this is in exchange for Palestinian prisoners, women and children, or teenagers as they are now, who've been detained in Israel. So some really stark images. One that really struck out to me, I think it was in The Sun, there's quite a striking image of a woman with her child, presumably on holiday, looking really relaxed, and then you have the picture of her sitting, somberly on a plane coming back, and you think that in itself maybe hints at the emotional toll. Obviously their families will be so delighted to have them back, but what's also striking is that it's not all of a family group necessarily. If there's men in that group, then those men are either still detained or we don't actually know. We still don't know. One of the women who's been released, an elderly woman, had been reported to have died. So that must be just unfathomable emotions for her family. So it does remain to be seen what condition these people are in that were released yesterday and will hopefully be released in the coming
days. Of course, they're getting physical and psychological support, as you can imagine. And
this is the thing I can't get my head around, Barbara. I've chosen the front page of The Guardian because the headline is just so... It's simple but emotive. War is paused while 24 hostages are freed. And it's just that word paused. It's like, if you only were that simple, to press a button and stop all this hate and the fighting and the loss of life on both sides. And to me, that sort of brought it home. And it's like, it's what is happening now to the people that have been released, the people that have been held in the tunnels. They probably haven't seen daylight for nearly a month now, over a month now, is it? So they probably haven't seen daylight. And the children in particular are going to come out, some of them to find out they haven't got a mum and dad anymore. And I just can't get my head around what that must be like to go through that. And the older people as well, whose health is probably suffering, but what that must be like to come out and find your entire life has just gone. What you knew as a kid has just completely gone. And the psychological help that these people are going to need is particularly, it's just heartbreaking on a Saturday morning. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting you mentioned the word pause, because the Times uses the word ceasefire. And of course,
Yes.
this whole debate, because the Israelis don't want a ceasefire. So, is it a pause? Is it a ceasefire? I mean, a lot of people would want it to become a ceasefire, but not everyone. So it's interesting.
The language is very interesting around this, isn't it?
Because it's not by chance. I mean, it has a very different meaning. So, Shona, let's look at the Telegraph. And again, the impact that issues in the Middle East are having back here in the UK. So the headline, Comic Relief Chief quits over Gaza stance.
Yeah, and there's sort of two aspects to this. One is that this statement was issued. The charity joined dozens of other organisations in calling for a ceasefire in the Gaza conflict, perhaps to be separated from this notion of a pause that we're seeing at the moment. So what happened was that this decision was made without any prior consultation with the board of the charity or with Eric Salama, who was the chairman of that board. And so you've got a sort of procedural issue there where you would think, well, why wouldn't they consult the board? But actually what he has said is that the statement represented an approach to an issue which I thought was profoundly wrong and which I could not live with. And it's notable inside the paper that the chairman was actually due to quit this role in March, so not that long away, but clearly he feels so strongly about this decision. There is some suggestion that, an organisation like charity, like Comic Relief, taking this stance could impact donations, corporate donations, and so there's politics involved. But I think the statement suggests to me that it's personal rather than focused on something like that for this decision to be made.
Yeah. Let's now look at some domestic news.
Yes.
So yes, front page of the Mail, Dawn, and they're saying we want to end the stealth tax, and this is about the quite controversial, basically, the personal tax thresholds.
You know what is interesting? Yeah, well, interesting this morning, all the front pages, not all of them have gone on what's happening in the Middle East, and I think it's very interesting to look at which papers haven't. I mean, the Sun and the Star doing what they do on a Saturday morning are light-hearted and showbiz stories. And the Mail has completely not mentioned the pause in the fighting and the hostage release at all on page one. We've gone back to taxes.
Surprise you?
Yeah, which we've all been talking about all week, haven't we? But this is the hated stealth tax. This is where Rishi Sunak chose to freeze the tax thresholds back in 2021 to recoup some of the £400 billion they spent getting us all through the pandemic. But what they've done is by freezing that, they've meant that millions more of us now have been dragged into, i.e. paying tax. I think there's 3 million dragged into paying tax for the first time, very low earners in a cost of living crisis. And middle earners, 4 million of those dragged into the 40p tax bracket. Even pensioners are suffering with this. And the Office for Budget Responsibility forecasts that 37.7% national income over the next year, rise of record tax in that. It's incredible. It's really hated, and it's the one thing both Conservative and Labour are agreed on. Labour say they will get rid of this freeze because it's really not fair, and it's everyone that's suffering because of that, in particular the low earners.
Yeah. So does it surprise you that they have it on the front page or?
It doesn't, because I think they are playing to their market. I mean, I've worked on tabloids for sort of nearly 40 years now, and I think they are playing to their market, and this is what at the moment. And I think at the moment, as important as events are in the Middle East, I think on the weekend the papers are very aware that there is only so much you can cope with. As horrific as it is, it can be overload, and they're giving people something else maybe to distract them from that. Look, we shouldn't be distracted. We should be talking about it. We should be wanting peace, obviously. But I completely understand what they've done. Also got Jamie Oliver and a nice cake on there as well, by the way.
Okay. Shona, the Star, front page, Stockton, the Garden of Eden. This is that. Did he say it or didn't he say it? James cleverly comment about Stockton.
Well, I mean, I think he did say it. I think he did say it. And this is, God bless the Daily Star. This is exactly what we want to see. Well, hang on. Let's go there and find out what it really is all about. And if we agree with this comment, you can buy a pint of beer for around £3. I love how one of the boasts is it has the widest high street in the whole of Britain.
What is that about?
Is that a good thing? I'm not sure. Okay, maybe you just have to go. And then even TV star Bob Mortimer once worked there, and then you've got inside other nice things about Stockton. So, I mean, if nothing else, you would think that probably most of the people who live in Stockton will, even if it's not their normal habit, be buying
I think
a Saturday
so.
Daily
And probably
Star.
frame that front page.
Indeed.
Somewhere.
It's this brilliant story, but the thing is with James Cleverly, it's right. The first rule of holes, just stop digging, okay? I didn't actually hear what he said. I still couldn't hear it. My hearing isn't great at the moment, but I still couldn't quite hear what he said. But just leave it. Just, and then he doubled down by saying, no, I wasn't talking about the place, I was talking about the bloke. And it's like, no, that's even worse. Stop.
Okay, let's finish with the front page of the Express. Dawn, Dame Esther Ranson's joy over precious present of life.
Yeah, this is it's a very good, warm human story. I've had the huge pleasure of working with our Dame Esther, and she is lovely, and she's done so much for charity. But she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and she is on experimental drugs, and she is saying that they are holding back her cancer. Obviously, it's stage 4. It's never going to be cured as such, but it is holding it back, and it's given her the gift of being able to enjoy life for a bit longer and spend this Christmas with her family. So it's a lovely, heartwarming story, and it's just good for her. I mean, and she's raising awareness as well for cancer too.
Which is always so key. All right, Dawn, Shona, I know you'll be with us for the rest of breakfast for the moment. Thank you so much.